I say in my book that technology addiction is the most pressing issue that our generation faces right now. Obviously, you can make cases for climate change and for artificial intelligence in some ways, but I just think like, you go on the T here, so many people just face down, very unobservant to the rest of the world, and I could go on about all the detrimental things with it. But I think AI and it being more accessible and more used by the everyday folk is only going to make that technology addiction worse. You are very outdoorsy. You love exploring. You love traveling. You love kind of just getting away from all of that from time to time. How, as you only get more ingrained in this world, it becomes more a part of your life, how are you going to try to maintain that other side of you?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I've always been someone to push back on like the negative connotation of like people using the internet or using their phones or whatever, just because I grew up very much as like an internet kid. Like most of what I know is learned off of the internet. And I think like there are, in the same way that you can read books that give you really no unique perspective or teach you nothing, or you can watch shows that give you nothing or movies or whatnot, like any way that you can get information, you can do it in the like pure entertainment, no learning, no like growing form. Like the internet has all the information that you could ever desire. And so you could become the most productive person by, constantly being in your phone, or you could, learn so much, or you could have great social interactions. I mean, I do think social interaction online is like typically not very good right now. Like it's just much better in person. Like you really don't connect with people online. But so I will push back a little bit on like people focusing more on technology in their lives, like especially young people, as being like an outright bad thing. I think it's more so just the um, with technology comes like convenience of entertainment. If you can get the dopamine hit for no effort, then it becomes like an addictive thing, and it just becomes something that you don't need to grow for, you don't need to put in effort for. And that seems like long term bad. You just don't become like an interesting person. And I think like, going outside, like hiking a mountain is like the complete opposite of that in my mind, because you don't even necessarily get like an outright dopamine hit. It's much more just the fun is in the challenge. Um, and you just don't have that, yeah, in the modern world as much. So I think it'll always be a nice um break for me to go and do something that is just, difficult or type 2 fun, or just for the act of it. But like, I think keeping that in my life will mostly just be like having the time and finances to be able to keep doing that, because it gets
You'll
harder.
certainly have the finances, Colby.
Yeah, but I guess the time maybe is tough. But yeah, anyway, I don't mean to derail the point to talk about how phones are actually good for people, but I just think that like it's the internet has been wrongly attributed as like the brain melter in the same way that like TV has or whatever. And I just think that you can always find, your own podcast is on the internet, and people might be head down listening to it on the T,
As they should.
yeah, as they should. um but but yeah, I mean, I guess how do you see that in your own life? Like, how do you manage to keep the sort of adventure as part of it? I mean, I guess, adventure is now part of your
Oh
your
yeah.
job.
Yeah, so I mean, I have to make a clear decision sometimes. I do this tradition. I don't do it as much as I used to. I try to bring it back when I can. Screenless Saturday, where I do pretty much the entire day until I watch the UFC fights at like 7 p.m. without a screen. So I'll usually find a coffee shop in another town that I want to go to on Friday night, and I'll write down the map's directions, and I'll follow my handwritten directions, and I'll just go and I'll handwrite, I'll read a paperback book, I'll walk around, I'll just do anything I can just to reconnect with nature, to be with my own thoughts, to be undistracted, because I do think long periods of undistracted, focused thoughts are really good. And I do think we are losing that a little bit because, the hardest thing in the world to do is to sit there in silence with your own thoughts. I'm sure you've heard of this test before, and I don't know when it was done, but the psychology experiment that was like, you can either, you have to sit in a room for 10 minutes alone. But if you want out, you can like get a shock administered to your hand first. And a significant percentage of the people opted for the shock after like 3 minutes. So I do think that that's a problem, that we can't enjoy stillness. Stillness is something that is very important to me. It's very grounding. And I think it ultimately makes me a better person, being able to connect with myself in that way. Self-reflection is a huge part of who I am. And I think we're losing the ability to do that, because why would you self-reflect when you can watch a cat video on TikTok?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's a great point. Like just being able to like almost entertain yourself with your own thoughts sort of thing is like I guess a weird way to say it, but like we are definitely losing the ability to like have like deep thought or have self-reflection without like stimulus that just sort of like tricks our brain into like having those thoughts. I Most of my job is just kind of sitting there thinking. And most of like why I like breaking free from technology when the times that I do is purely just for being able to pursue lines of thought like about my personal life, about my work, about just like whatever thing I find interesting, just kind of on my own, or having those conversations with people without the sort of crutch that technology is. Because like if you're trying to puzzle through something in your mind and you can easily just look it up, or you can easily just listen to somebody else espouse their opinion on it, then you really don't go through the exercise of like doing it yourself. And I think like we mentioned it before, but like there's so many things that automation and ease of access just like it atrophies your mind in the same way that if you never walked, you only drove a car, you just atrophy.
Right.
So I think that's very valuable, but yeah, I think you can get the right kind of stimulus online, but you still need to live life without stimulus sometimes.